আসসালামু আলাইকুম, ওয়েলকাম টু উইন্ডো অফ থটস চ্যানেল। নতুন একটি পডকাস্ট নিয়ে আপনাদের আবারও স্বাগতম জানাচ্ছি। আজকে আমাদের পডকাস্টে আছেন একজন স্পেশাল কেউ। Today's topic that we're going to discuss is Darwinism, why it matters. Now, before going on, I should introduce my special guest to you. Today, joining with me, Brother Subboor Ahmad. He is an instructor, lecturer, and outreach specialist for Islamic Education and Research Academy, IRA. He was born in London. He graduated from the City University of London in engineering. Currently, he is pursuing a postgraduate degree in the philosophy of science with particular focus on philosophy of biology. He is found guest lecturing at various universities and colleges on the topic of evolution, science, and Islam. He debated academics and science popularizers on the topic of evolution. So, Brother Subboor Ahmad, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. How are you doing, Akhi?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So, we were planning for this podcast, even I, for nearly 4 to 5 months. And
Yes.
alhamdulillah, Allah made that
was
easy.
my fault. I kept delaying it, and I'm very disorganized. But
No,
alhamdulillah, Allah just kept doing this thing. It just kept coming back in my head. So that must have been Allah just reminding me, you got to get back to this guy.
So, what I want to ask you before going on our discussion is, what is your current plan, what you're doing in your studies, and what you're planning right now to go on with these topics?
Sure. So, Bismillah, the first thing is that, alhamdulillah, just recently I completed a master's in philosophy.
You completed that. Okay.
And I'm going to be going on, inshallah, to do a PhD soon, inshallah, if I get into a good university. And the thing is that for me, the most important issue of dealing with this topic is that you need to deal with it in a way that Imam Ghazali dealt with his opponents, right?
Okay.
So Imam Ghazali, when he was trying to deal with certain ideas which were challenging Islam, what he decided to do was he decided to master a field and become an expert in that field, and then undermine the arguments of those opponents of his using the tools that they accept, not the tools they don't accept. So I see Imam Ghazali, and we should all see Imam Ghazali as a role model for Muslims, right? There's a reason why he's called the proof of Islam. So that's my aim, inshallah, to master the field of philosophy of biology, really understand it at an in-depth level, and to make sure that, Muslims do not fall into issues when conveying the message of Islam. So Muslims don't, start feeling an inferiority complex, we don't have an answer to this question, or they start accommodating to worldviews that don't fit with ours. And what I really want to do is, look, the aim is not really to have an intellectual dialogue about an abstract topic. That's not the aim, right? The aim is, as Allah says in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, هُوَ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى دِينِ كُلِّ وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا. That is He, Allah, who sent His messenger with guidance and the religion of truth, so that it may manifest over all religion, so that it may prevail over all religion. And enough is Allah as a witness. And Allah makes this promise 3 times in the Quran, right? That Islam as a religion, it will prevail. And subhanAllah, if you think about it, we Muslims, we face intellectual problems, we face political problems, we face economic problems, we face attacks from all ends, we face, all these things. And, subhanAllah, like Sheikh Hoblos from Australia, right? Muhammad Hoblos. He says if any religion came under that level of pressure that Islam came under, it would have collapsed. it would have finished, it would have been done with. If you just think about the machinery that's behind the attack on Islam, right? And obviously one of the fronts of the attack is intellectual, just to undermine Islam, just to make it like a belief in fairy tales. So what I want to do is on the intellectual front, I want to empower the Muslims so that the Muslims go out there and convey the message of Islam, because at the end of the day, we have a religion which we know is true. We know that there is an answer to these doubts and these questions and these things that are put out there. And we just have to go and search for them. We just have to find ways of articulating our religion in a way that the opponents of Islam, the only thing that they'll be left to do is not put forward intellectual challenges. The only thing they'll be left to do is to actually insult you. That's the only thing that's left. Because when the Sahaba were discussing with the mushriks, right? So the mushriks had their logic. They had their Lat, their Uzza, all these things, right? And the Sahaba, they were intellectually explaining to them, this doesn't make sense. It makes sense to worship one God. It makes sense to do this. So they intellectually didn't lose a battle. The Sahaba intellectually did not lose a battle. The Prophets intellectually with their nations, they never lost a battle. Physical battles, the Sahaba and the Prophets, they lost. And they also won. That's winning and losing. But intellectually, they never lost. Prophets never lose, and the Sahaba never lost. So what we need to do is we need to make it so intellectually we don't lose. We don't lose intellectually, right? Afterwards, if they want to insult us, if they want to say whatever, that's fine. We've won, right? We've won intellectually, so it doesn't matter. They can say what they want. And what we need to get to is a point that the West, as you know, is at the forefront, the intellectual forefront of the world. And if we can manage to convey the message of Islam to the sincere people in the West, the good people in the West, the sincere people in the West, whose fitrah is still alive, who, obviously everyone's fitrah is alive, but their fitrah is made closer to, right? Clouded. And it's maybe. And then we start galvanizing these converts to Islam. We start galvanizing them. They will not only have an impact on the non-Muslim world, that people start saying, hey, look at these guys. They'll even have an impact in the Muslim world, because the Muslims themselves have forgotten Islam. The Muslims themselves have gotten into all these different things, right? So even when it comes to basics of Islam, Muslims don't understand stuff, right? So the fact that the West is at the forefront, and if the West comes to Islam in a big way, right? I'm not talking about percentages like 50%, 40%. No, even a small critical mass. If the West comes to Islam, then that is going to actually project Islam all across the world. Because whether you're in Africa or Latin America or Southeast Asia, everyone looks towards the West. Everyone wants to be like the West. So if the West turns to Islam, even a small portion of it, it'll have huge ramifications for the world. And for us to obviously engage with the Western mind, we have to engage with a mind which is very philosophical, which is very intelligent, which is not, you can't really give them the dry sort of dawah, which is the sort of dawah we're used to in Southeast Asia, right? In the Indian subcontinent, where it's just like, this is Islam, this, and, just follow it. No, you have to, the Prophet ﷺ, he spoke in a way that the Quraysh would accept him. Yeah, when Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, when he went to Syria, and he dressed in a certain way, right? He dressed in a way that was very beautiful, and the people, I believe it was Umar radiallahu anhu, he said to him, my governors don't dress like this. Like, why you dress like in such a way? And obviously, remember, Syria was a former Roman territory where there were Greek Hellenistic thinking, very rich, very affluent, a capital and whatnot. So Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he said, I dress this way because the Syrian people will not listen to me unless I am looking a particular way. In the same way, the impression that we have in the world today is if you're Muslim, you're going to be poor, you're going to be backward, you're going to be uneducated. So what we need to do is we need to dispel that. And the way to dispel that is by challenging these intellectual challenges to Islam in a sound way, and also projecting Islam forward in a way that's acceptable to people.
Okay, so that was really insightful, interesting, because what I found really interesting about the Ghazali, I didn't know that, and the principle that you have mentioned about Ghazali, rahimahullah, if he developed that idea many years ago, then, you know, we can just imagine his intellect, his engaging capacity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him, subhanallah. And another thing that you mentioned is about the ridicule. You know, I engage in online and offline discussions on science and evolution. And most of the time that I found ridicule. Even I asked them a very simple basic question: what is evolution? Can you define the modern synthesis? What are the assumptions of modern synthesis? No one once have answered me that. Even there was an interesting incident in the BBC Earth. You covered the March of Progress icon. That is actually a false representation of Darwinian paradigm. I've also made a video on that. So they actually shared an article of QZ, and I made a comment there about the idea of progress is basically a Eurocentric idea that helped the Europeans to oppress the savage, so-called, their savages, and to colonize other parts of the world. And people became furious. Even I found one ex-clinical scientist who, you know, just attacked me. I replied with a reference from Atheist, What Darwin Got Wrong by Jerry Fodor and Massimo Pietrilli-Palmarini. I referred that book. He immediately deleted his comment. He didn't give me a reply. You know, this is the thing that we find even in international level. So just imagine what will be in Bangladesh. Anyway,
definitely. So, Dr. Rafan, you know, mashallah, I've heard a lot about the work that you do in Bangladesh. So maybe if you can also just introduce quickly what you do and why you're doing it.
Yes, I should. I am Dr. Rafan Ahmed from Bangladesh. I have graduated in medical science from a second top medical college in our country, alhamdulillah. So my life went through a journey from folk Islam to agnosticism to Islam. And what I try now is to share the experiences that I gathered in this short journey. And alhamdulillah, I've written 2 books in 2017 and in this year, 2019. And alhamdulillah, both of the books became bestseller in a very short time. Now I'm currently writing another book, which is for beginners. And interesting enough, Richard Dawkins has released a book for beginners. Anyway, that will actually focus on my next book, inshallah, will focus on the limitation of human knowledge and to achieve humility from that understanding, and to understand that we human beings cannot ever achieve truth unless we have revelation, unless we have guidance. And on that book, I will write some, inshallah, preliminary thing about evolution, inshallah. And I'm also, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have gave me a chance to even read the draft copy of the Divine Reality that has been translated in Bangla, inshallah. I hope that will be available in this year. And why now, you can ask why I'm actually talking on particular the Darwinian evolution to you. Because in our country, just like outside, atheists try to push a narrative that when we have evolution, even though they understand what that is, so we have evolution, so that actually undermines God. So that is the very simple, naive understanding that they try to push. And as, alhamdulillah, you have been studying these things for some years, and you're testing your study and ideas in field, I would say. You've debated academics and popularizers. So I thought if I can actually have a discussion with you on this topic, we Muslims and also free-thinking people will be able to be benefited from this topic. So I think we should go forward straightly to the topic. My first question to you is, why are we even talking about evolution or Darwinism?
Yes. So, Akhi, something we need to come to terms with is that the center point of the argument between us and them is two things.
Okay.
And that's basically this. The Prophet ﷺ foretold in his ummah there's going to be a disease. And this disease, which has been translated as weakness, but I believe the Arabic term is wahan, right? Now that weakness, he explained as being two things. And I think this is very interesting because those things are related to atheism and they're related to materialism. And those are the love of this world and the fear of death, right? The love of this world and the fear of death. Now, if you look at the new atheist movement, they are projecting the love of this world and they're making us basically doubt the hereafter, right? It's like, forget about the hereafter. It doesn't really, nothing's really going to happen. Not really sure, you know. So those are the very foundational things. Now, what you find with even secular-minded Muslims, with so-called, we call them desi liberals or whatever, right? These types of people. The people
we in our country we call them shushil. In a Bangla word, there's a Bangla word. That actually means that you have mentioned a desi liberal or something. In our Bangladesh, we use the term shushil. Carry on, please.
There you go. Sushi or shushi?
Not sushi. It's not Japanese sushi. It is actually shushil. Shushil.
Okay.
আমরা তাদেরকে সুশীল বলি আর কি। Anyway, carry on.
You guys have diagnosed it as well. It's actually a disease. Right? So the thing is, Akhi, if you look at their arguments, what do they say? When you say to them, Akhi, you need to come to Islam, you need to have a relationship with Allah, you need to realize that this life is short, their answer is simple. Look at the West. Look at the West. Look at the West. They have progress. They have economies. They have wealth. We want to be like them. We want to be like them. The main issue is not some intellectual problem with atheism or feminism or materialism. No, the issue is they have something. We want it. It's like little kids. Yeah, they have something. We want it. And they link the material wealth of the West with its ideology. Right? So they're secular, they're rich. So if I become secular, I'll become rich. Well, the sad reality is that this is a shattered dream. There are many people in Egypt, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, all over the Ummah, who've been through this. In the 60s and the 70s, they decided to completely secularize themselves, even change their names, right? When they go abroad and the way that people speak to them, they decided to adopt the Western dress, adopt the Western values, adopt everything while they were in those countries. And even those countries were secular at one time, very secular. They didn't get those material things, the prosperity which was promised. Why? Because if you look at the Western world, the promise of wealth and these things, in the Western world, it's not purely due to the fact that they're secular and somehow they're secular from the skies, they get all this money coming in. It's because those same countries which were secular were also colonial powers. They were also imperial powers. So for example, take a place like Romania, militantly atheist. They were under communist rule, right? Likewise, Poland was under communist rule. Other parts of Eastern Europe are very, very atheistic. Till today, if you go to their university departments, if you go to these things, you find that there's parts of Eastern Europe where people are still, they have a hangover of after communism, of this militant secularization. Those countries aren't rich. They're probably more secular than the UK was and other countries were, barring France, right? How come they're not rich? The reason why they're not rich is they weren't colonial powers. So even if we take this logical argument that secularism is linked to wealth, right? It doesn't make sense if you look at the actual history, because there are secular countries which aren't wealthy. But the thing which I do want to highlight is that we're headed, as a Muslim Ummah, we're headed towards a major problem which we don't really want to acknowledge. we Muslims ourselves have become very materialistic. And being materialistic is a primer, is a prerequisite, is a material condition which gets us ready for Dajjal, right? Because if you look at Dajjal, his message is going to be that over the dunya. He's going to be saying, I can give you this, I can give you this, I can give you this wealth, I can give you this, right? And the people who are going to be attracted to him are the people who are going to be materialistic, right? And the people who are going to stay away from him, they're going to realize it's not about the love of this world, right? What we're seeing in the world today is that atheism is priming the world for this materialistic worldview. It's not simply a topic of science. Yeah, okay, we're having a discussion about Darwinism. It's about science versus religion. No, it's not. It's much wider than that. There's a huge psychological, ideological war going on between the worldview which believes in Tawheed and the worldview which believes in materialism. And this is the fundamental issue that, when it comes to Darwinism, if someone asks me, why does it matter? It doesn't matter about the science or about the philosophy of biology or about propaganda that Darwinists push out about, university textbooks or intelligent design. No, that's not the real core issue. The real core issue is that they are trying to undermine the existence of God, and they're trying to project materialism. That's the main issue, right? Now, even when it comes to the issue of universal common ancestry, us being related to other primates, that's not the core issue, right? Because if you happen to be, and you can check this out for yourself, Dr. Rafan, because you know better than I do. If you come out tomorrow and say, I believe in universal common ancestry, I believe we're linked to chimpanzees, right? So I accept that part of Darwinism. And you also accept natural selection is a creative force and all of that. You accept that, but then you also make a comment and you say, but I also accept that God overall is the creator. Yeah, God overall has set the laws of the universe in place that natural selection later on took on. And I also accept the whole Darwinian picture about the tree of life. They will not accept that, even though you've accepted all the standard science. Even though you've submitted, even though you've done sajda to them, you've said, fair enough, I'll accept it. I'll accept all of your Darwinism. As long as you believe in Allah, they will not accept it. Why? Because the whole objective behind their propaganda was to get you to disbelieve in God. Now, if you happen to disbelieve in God and you hardly understand the science, you know nothing about the science, they're not going to go out of their way to try and educate you, to try and enlighten you, because the job's done. Yeah, kaam ho gaya. You've disbelieved in God. So the main issue is that they want you to get away from God, which is why in my discussions, what I try and do is I try and get to the root of the issue. The root of the issue is not common ancestry. The root of the issue is not this particular gene is close to this gene or this fossil is this. No, the main issue is the existence of God and them trying to undermine the existence of God. Because if that wasn't the case, we wouldn't really be having this conversation, right? So that's the core issue of why Darwinism matters.
Okay, that was really interesting. And I remembered about Alfred Russel Wallace, who was a kind of co-founder of the idea of natural selection. He did not believe in the random creation, randomness of this process. He actually believed in the intelligent cause was behind that process. So I actually wanted to also ask you the relationship between Darwinism and denying God, and interestingly, you have answered this question in, I think, in very good detail about this. So I want to go to some, technical things, like what is evolution? Can you define to me what is evolution?
So like a lot of things, there's multiple definitions, there's multiple uses, and the way it's used in a popular sense is not the same as an academic sense. Now, what I like to do is I like to strip down the meaning of evolution to the very basic meaning, which is biological change over time. And then I like to separate Darwinian evolution away from that. Because even academically, even though Darwinism is an academic term, and it basically means two twin theses, which is universal common ancestry and natural selection being the primary driving force. Even academically, there's a bit of interplay, so interchange between the words. So sometimes using the word evolution, sometimes using the word Darwinism. So just for clarity, I like to just keep evolution to its basic meaning of biological change over time, and Darwinism as universal common ancestry and natural selection being the primary driving force.
Okay. And I think that you've mentioned evolution is change over time, and we can find this definition in academic books. I have here with me Human Evolution, a very short introduction from Oxford University Press. Here in page 16, author admits that evolution means gradual change. He actually subscribed to gradualism anyway. So we find the meaning that you have said, that evolution is change over time, and you have separated Darwinism, that it has a kind of history of life that is known as the universal common ancestry, and there is an underlying mechanism that actually drives this history. Now, what I want to ask then is the evolutionary theory as a scientific theory, is it a fact in the common sense, as we know, kind of a truth that will not change, or is absolutely certain? Is it that the case?
So the thing is that it's better if we just use the term true, right?
True,
because
okay.
the word fact has lots of confusion around it. So anything in science is never going to be certain. Any theory in science is never going to be absolutely true, the way that we understand truth in the popular sense. It's going to be a valid working model, theory, paradigm. It's going to be a working hypothesis. It's going to be tested. It's going to be challenged. And that's true with every scientific theory. So why on earth do we make a distinction? Not we, but why on earth do Darwinists make a distinction when it comes to Darwinism? That they don't, all the other scientific theories, philosophers of science understand this, and even evolutionary biologists, even though a lot of biologists don't understand the philosophy of science, even they would say, okay, it's not, science doesn't give you truth with a capital T. But hardcore Darwinists, they're still like, no, it's true. It's beyond doubt. If you don't believe in it, you're like insane. Yeah. So a basic understanding of the philosophy of science would challenge it.
Okay. So now, what you have actually tried to focus on the scientific conclusions that actually we know is not certain, is not true. Now, one thing I want to ask you is, why is that the case, that even scientific facts or even observations, why these things changes? Can you give us a short idea about that?
Sure. So the first thing is that you have a problem of induction, which is that you can always get a new observation that challenges your previous theory. Another issue is that the same data can give rise to multiple interpretations, right? This is known as the problem of underdetermination, right? There is also the problem of unconceived alternatives, that the same data that you're looking at, you can have inferences which you've never thought of, right? So you have these big issues. But apart from this, something I'd like to speak about is that if I walk into a lab and there's a sign at the door which says, leave behind the color red, right? So I have to wear these glasses, and when I walk into the lab, I cannot see the color red because I'm wearing these glasses. I cannot see the color red, right? All I can see is all the other colors, but I cannot see the color red. So what it is that when it comes to walking into the lab and doing these sort of actions, that front door sign limits what I can actually do.
Yes.
So even if red exists out there, I will not see it in the lab, right? Yes. Because I'm wearing these glasses. So the issue is that when you walk into the lab of science, you have to accept the assumption of methodological naturalism. You have to accept that. And methodological naturalism restricts you from coming to certain conclusions.
Can you just define methodological naturalism for the audiences? What does it mean actually?
So firstly, naturalism means that there are only natural effects and natural causes. Everything can be broken down to the physical or physical processes, right? So everything just breaks down to something material. Now, that's naturalism. Naturalism is a belief, it's a worldview that there is no immaterial mind, there is no soul, there's no objective morals, there's no God, there's nothing supernatural. It's all natural. So that's naturalism, or sometimes it's called sometimes called philosophical naturalism. Methodological naturalism says, as a methodology in science, we're going to assume there is only natural effects and natural causes. So it's a methodology. So when you walk into the scientific lab, you have to accept methodological naturalism. Now, whether methodological naturalism is valid or not, I don't want to get into that because that's going to be a tangent, but that's a very interesting discussion to have as well. That's basically the assumption. Now, the implications of methodological naturalism are these. You cannot refer to God in any way in biology or in physics or in chemistry. So when we are looking at a very complex biological structure, very complex, no matter how designed it looks, we have to assume it just there was no design there. Design is a folk term, it's a redundant term. So Francis Crick, who, as you know, he discovered the structure of the DNA. He won the Nobel Prize for that. He said that biologists have to continuously remind themselves that what they see was not designed, but rather evolved. So it's an assumption that whatever you see in nature, no matter how complicated, no matter how amazing, it's something which can be explained via a naturalistic process. The implication of methodological naturalism also applies to life on Earth in terms of its genealogy. So human beings appearing in the history of life without being linked to something else. Like human beings just appeared some hundreds of thousands of years ago, out of the blue, without being linked to something else in nature. That's impossible under the assumption of methodological naturalism. Also under methodological, that's why we have to be linked to something else in nature. And that's why also the origin of life, no matter how amazing the DNA is, no matter how sophisticated the genetic code is, regardless of these things, we have to assume, because of methodological naturalism, the origin of life is a naturalistic event. There is nothing divine, nothing supernatural. So methodological naturalism is also one of the reasons why that science is restricted to certain explanations. Like myself personally, I obviously quote philosophers of science, philosophers of biology, and evolutionary biologists who doubt the power of natural selection, right? So I just quote them, and then I say, look, these are their views. Now, my own view is obviously I share their sentiments that natural selection being a driving force of change is questionable. But I go a bit further beyond that in terms of my own personal views. I think even positing the idea that such a powerless, weak force, that natural selection that we know it to be, can generate the human mind with its capacity and its love for art and philosophy and poetry and design and going to the moon and you know, building libraries and civilizations and having these conferences on morality. For me, it's like a non-starter. Yeah, it's like me saying to you, Dr. Rafan, I want to come to Bangladesh, right? And what I want to do is I want to use a spoon, and I want to start digging from where I am in Islamabad using the spoon. And in about 10 years, I want to basically keep digging and tunnel my way to Bangladesh, right? You're going to think, what the hell's wrong with you? Why don't you just take a flight? So when I look at natural selection as a process, it's so weak, it's so pathetic that you think to yourself, why can't you just posit like a creator that's dealt with these biological, how did this biological novel design come around? Because there was a divine power behind this. But automatically there's a no sign, which is, no, you cannot speak about God. No, you cannot refer to God. And I, as an observer, when I watch this, I'm not in a position to challenge methodological naturalism, but I am in a position as an observer to say, there's clear things that you can see are design, but a biologist cannot say design in the theological sense, because he's not allowed to, or he or she is not allowed to, because there's just a stop sign. No, you cannot do that. And the problem is that because methodological naturalism is so strong, and science is seen as a new religion of sorts, you know, people ask questions, and this is so funny, Dr. Rafan, yeah? People ask questions about the purpose of life to a scientist. Right? People ask moral questions. You know, this woman, she asked Richard Dawkins, I'm pregnant with an autistic child. What shall I do? He said, abort and try again. The man's giving fatwas. He's like, Yani, you know, I think this.
Grand Mufti of atheism.
You know, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. You know, and one thing which I speak about, which I'm very passionate about, yeah, is hypocrisy. These people, they call themselves free thinkers, skeptics, enlightened souls, bright. They have all these terms, you know, for themselves. Yet, when it comes to Darwinism, they just accept it like sheep. They're just like, yeah, okay. And when you ask them, so you've accepted this idea, why do you accept it? They're like, because Richard Dawkins said this, because, and you're like, hang on a second. When you ask us why we believe, and we refer to God, right? Or we refer to the Prophet, you are like, oh, that's so backward. Oh, you religious folk are so backward. Oh, come on. How can you just accept authority? We need to rebel against authority. And these guys, they just automatically accept whatever Richard Dawkins says, right? And these people, I'm not saying that Richard Dawkins doesn't have an argument for what he's trying to say, but these guys don't even know the argument. For them, it's enough. I remember I was at a Dawah table in South London, maybe close to 9 years ago. And we were giving out literature on Islam, and this English guy walked past, this elderly gentleman, right? And he didn't even bother trying to explain why he was an atheist. He just walked past us and he said, read Richard Dawkins. You know, like, you know, he'll sort you out. You know, he's got this.
Like a prophet right now.
Yeah, like a prophet. When I read the God Delusion,
yeah,
I got confused. I thought, is this the book that everyone's talking about? It's so underwhelming. It's so full of emotional content. The whole book is an emotional rant. The whole book, and look at this, Rafan Bhai, yeah? The whole book is an emotional rant, yet the author doesn't actually believe emotions like love, fear, hope, trust, faith, all these emotive things, according to him, only break down to electrical chemical signals. All of, in his other book, Unweaving the Rainbow, he says there is no right, there is no wrong, there's no design, the universe doesn't care about us. And in the other book, The God Delusion, he's speaking about this is wrong, this is right, this shouldn't happen, these people's rights are being curtailed. And he's like a moral warrior. And in the other book, he says morality basically doesn't exist.
Under naturalism, you cannot ontologically explain it. You can assume it, you can imagine it, just like Yuval Noah Harari wrote in his book, the so-called human rights and other stuff. These are some common imaginations that we've invented, but they are not ready to actually acknowledge.
His power, Richard Dawkins' power, his wooing power over susceptible people in the Muslim world, Munafiq type people, even Westerners, I did a Dawah training course a few weeks ago. All I did was, these were young people who wanted to give Dawah, but they were also young people who were a little bit confused about these atheistic ideas. And I primed them to ask questions, challenge. What I'm saying, challenge it. What I'm saying, disagree with it. I said to them, guys, I'm going to end atheism in the next 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, right? And they were a bit shocked, like, how the hell can you end atheism? And I said, I'm going to end atheism with 2 slides. 2 slides, the end of new atheism. Khalas, finished, gone. They said, okay, fine. Like, obviously they had this attitude, bring it on. So I said to them, right, here's a picture of the world. And in the world, you have wealth, right? You have all the people who are wealthy and the people who are not wealthy. So the people who are wealthy, they are highlighted a certain color. The people who are not wealthy are highlighted another color. So all of the wealthy people, they live where? In Western Europe and North Europe, North America, yeah? And the poor people, where do they live? Mostly Africa, the poorest, right? So I said, imagine for a second that the people in Africa who are poor are atheists. They're all atheists. And the rich people in Europe are all theists. They all believe in God. So that's my first slide. My second slide, I took out a picture of Richard Dawkins, right? And I said, look at this man. Imagine his name is not Richard Dawkins. His name is Ravi Devinder. He's from the University of Calcutta. He speaks with a heavy Indian accent, right? He's written the same God Delusion book, the same book. I said, this is the end of atheism. There's no atheism. No one's going to take it seriously in the Western world, nor in the Islamic world, because it's based upon materialism and white privilege, right? And honestly,
Yes.
I believe that. You think those Desi liberals in Bangladesh sitting in Chittagong with a cigarette in their mouth and saying, I'm an atheist, yar, you think they'll take Richard Dawkins seriously if he was brown? You think so?
I do not think so. They don't even read him, actually, I think. But if he was brown, definitely they will not accept.
We're going through, the Muslim Ummah is going through a post-colonial trauma, yeah? And
Yes.
alhamdulillah, you know, I'm not saying all, but I'm saying there is a elite in the Muslim world, in Egypt, in Bangladesh, in Pakistan, who are susceptible to these ideas. And they're susceptible to these ideas, frankly, because they're coconuts, yeah? They just want to be white, yeah? They look up to the West. I'll tell you a true story. Allah's my witness, this is a true story. A friend of mine, his name is Dr. Salman Bhat, right?
Okay.
He works for Islam 21C.
Okay.
He is, he studied, I'm sure if you go on YouTube, you're going to find his lectures, right?
Okay.
Dr. Salman Bhat, right?
Okay.
So he's a really funny guy, amazing guy. You know, I don't bump into him that much because obviously we work in different organizations, but it's just amazing. It's very, very funny. This guy's super intelligent, mashallah, right? He actually did a PhD in biochemistry from Imperial University. Yeah. So he's very, very intelligent, mashallah. Even though he doesn't really speak about biological evolution, he just speaks about general topics to do with Islam and politics, but he's very intelligent and he clearly understands biological evolution, right? He said to me that when he was working in London somewhere in some place, I don't know, some factory, I don't know where he was, yeah? And there was a Pakistani uncle who asked him, you know, like, Beta, what do you study? And so, you know, Dr. Salman, who at the time didn't get his PhD by that time, he just said, you know, uncle, I just, you know, I study genetics and whatnot. And then the Pakistani uncle said to him, oh, that's good. Maybe you can discover why the white people are better than us. I am telling you, yeah, that is the way a lot of people think. Yeah, they just think genetically, like there must be something wrong with us because we're not rich, we're not like the white folk. And this is the reality, Rafan Bhai, that the conquering power, the prevailing power is attracted. So it's attractive. Everyone looks up to them. Yeah. When the Muslims conquered Persia, the Persians looked up to the Muslims. In fact, in the ancient times, and these are supposedly primitive people, but we have the same mindset. When a conquering power took over, people saw that as a divine sign that God is with them. Yeah. Today we have the same thing. The Western world, because of, obviously, like I mentioned before, the Western world and its colonial history led it to be very prosperous. And obviously, if you're prosperous, you're going to be good at science. That's what the Muslims were like. That's what the Latinos may be like in a couple of decades, right? They may be at the forefront of science instead of the West. But then the rest of the world looks at them and says, because they're the dominating force, they must be right. And we really have to be what the Prophet ﷺ told us to be, which is leaders. The Prophet ﷺ said that all of us are leaders. We are leaders in our own way. A woman is a leader in her way, a man is a leader in his way, a child is a leader in a certain environment. Every one of us is a leader. We're not sheep. So since we are leaders, leaders don't do what everybody does. They do something different. They do the right thing. So what we must do is we must break out of this inferiority complex. We must batter it out of us. I'm from Pakistan, right? Originally, my grandfather came to UK, but I know the Pakistani society well, right? If you want to get your daughter married or your son married, you look for a fair, white-skinned person. And if you don't find a fair, white-skinned person, and if your daughter's quite fair, and say they're from the north, I'm a bit in the north, just below the north, but as you go from the north is where you get really white people, right? You get the Pathan people who are, mashallah, very beautiful. And as you keep going down to the south, you get to Sindh, right? Sindh, which is desert. The north is cold, yeah? Sindh, they look like Sri Lankans. They're proper dark, yeah? Proper dark. You try to come to Pakistan and find for me somebody that's very dark-skinned married to someone that's very light-skinned. People don't do that. Because this is a post-colonial thing. That we've even accepted white is right. Yeah? And this is all linked to the acceptance of the Western world view. These things are linked. You can, and this is why it's very important to highlight this, you can prove to somebody decisively that atheism is nonsense. You can show them that this particular person is wrong in this way and that way. It won't work. I'm telling you from experience, it will not work, because the very reason they're atheists is not intellectual. It's emotional. It's looking up to the Western world. So when you emotionally dislodge, and the reason why it has no impact is because we are just completely dazzled by the West. I'm not saying the Western world is evil, it is bad. No, it's not good. It's good. Alhamdulillah, there's very good things there. There's things there which are very Islamic, which the Muslims can learn from them, because they are things that happen in the Western world that the Muslims should recognize. This is what we used to have. We used to have societies which were not corrupt, which cared for the poor, which were very peaceful, where the rulers and the people, they had this good relationship. We used to have this. We used to have peace and prosperity and science. So we should look up to that. But what we shouldn't do is say, let's take it all. Let's take their feminism. Let's take their atheism. Let's take this. Let's take that. No, let's take what's good and leave what's bad, right? Let's not accept it wholeheartedly. And Darwinism is not just science. So when someone goes and says, right, let me just pick up Darwinism and just bring it back to the Muslim world, right? Let me just accept it wholeheartedly. They think they're just bringing home science, but they're not. They're bringing home an atheistic, materialistic Genesis story, which is there to undermine the existence of God, right? And you're going to find the people who are promoting Darwinism in the Muslim world, you will find, and this is very interesting, the people who are promoting Darwinism in the Muslim world also happen to be promoting a liberal reform of Islam. And it's not just a coincidence. It's not the case that these are Orthodox Muslims, they're practicing, they love Islam, they love the Prophet ﷺ. No, I truly believe these are hidden atheists and monophilists. I truly believe this, right? I believe those people who are going around trying to promote Darwinism and pretending to be Muslim, I believe these people, they're trying to make it more palatable, because if they came out as atheists, as you know, in the Muslim world, if you're an atheist, no one's going to take you seriously. Yeah, no one's going to take you seriously. So that's why these guys come. And these guys know that we have an inferiority complex as a Muslim world, and they themselves have an inferiority complex. Yeah? And they use these things. And what we need to do is we need to tell people directly, this is your inferiority complex. You are acting like a coconut. Yeah? And until and unless you have self-respect for yourself, you're not going to come out of this situation. I've come across Muslims who claimed, and they told me they had doubts about Islam. And I asked them why. And they said, I read this philosophy thing, or I read this science thing, or whatever. And when I actually got to the bottom of it, they never read those things and never understood them. They were flabbergasted by the fact that there's a white guy with a PhD, and his book is really big, and it's got a lot of writing. Honestly, that's all it was. They didn't even read it. They didn't even read it. I'm just going to give you one incident. Yeah, there's this one guy that contacted me, and he's like, bro, my iman's on the floor, my prayer's affected, I read this article, and my iman's finished. I don't know what to do. My iman's gone, right? I'm on the floor. I don't know what to do. So he gave me this article. He gave me this article from Stanford University Encyclopedia. I don't know what it was. It was an article against the existence of God, right? Now, alhamdulillah, I study philosophy, and not to brag, but you need to have training in philosophy to read philosophy papers. If I give a philosophy paper to an average Joe, they're not going to understand it. They're not going to know how you read it. You don't read philosophy papers like a book. You don't read it from beginning to end. You read the introduction, then you read the end, and you spend a lot of time trying to understand those two, and then you read it slowly, and then you reread a paragraph, because you have to go in very slow, right? And then you actually complete it. This guy supposedly read this article, which was very philosophical, and got confused. When I was going through the article, I thought to myself, hang on a second, this doesn't look right. This guy, I don't think he understands this, because when I was talking to him, I could tell this guy's not from a philosophy background. He's a youngish guy. So I said to him, this article that you're claiming is giving you doubts, and this is a Pakistani guy, yeah? This article that you're claiming is giving you doubts. Did you actually read the article? Did you actually finish the article? Did you actually read and understand the article? And he was like, no. I said, what? So you're having doubts about this particular article when you don't even fully understand it. He said, yeah, but there's a lot of writing, and there's a lot of premises, and it's from this university. And I said, you're having doubts because of an article that you don't understand?
Allah.
And he was like, oh yeah, I'm okay now. It's all right, I'm fine. And he is one example of many, many Muslim students in the Muslim world and in the Western world studying in universities and other places. Honestly, they're just dazzled. They're just bewitched. They don't actually understand they're having doubts because they think they're supposed to have doubts. I know this doesn't make any sense.
That's an interesting thing. Now, what you have discussed so far, and I can make a kind of a summary through this. You have mentioned about science being methodologically naturalistic. That means it actually assumes that before even thinking about science, we will exclude the possibility of God or any supernatural thing like, angels or demons or whatever it is, or even mind, whatever it is. So we'll exclude that, then we'll start doing science. Now, and you've focused that if that is the case, then there is no alternative to the questions of origin of life or human origin, because then it has to be linked with some prior things. And interesting enough, I wrote about the origin of life in my recent book. And when I read through different books, academic and popular books, I found, particularly in the light of development in the genetics, the idea of the information in a cell, and also the information that is not in the genome, because DNA doesn't make DNA, and there are some other protein systems that actually copy DNA, and some protein systems that actually copy DNA to RNA. That is the thing. So they try to oversimplify the fact. I'm not going to discuss that in detail, but in majority time, when you go deep down, you'll find that there is huge explanatory gaps to try to explain these things in a naturalistic term. And you also focused on the idea of science being revisible, and it is always limited, and the true it can achieve is maybe a probabilistic truth. Now, my question is, you have said Darwinian evolution has two things: the tree of life, the one hand, and the mechanism is the natural selection. I was reading Bernard Wood, and I've showed you before, Human Evolution. He said the only mechanism for evolution that has withstood scientific scrutiny is natural selection in terms of evolutionary idea. I don't agree with him anyway, because there are some other mechanisms. But what I want to focus, that you have mentioned the power of natural selection for creating novelty. And I can just give me a bit of time. In 2016, in the Royal Institute, there was a conference about the new trends in evolutionary biology. I know you're aware of that. And on that conference, Gerd Müller, an Austrian evolutionary biologist, he actually presented a slide, and according to him, the natural selection, it cannot explain phenotypic complexity, biases in the generation of variation, phenotypic novelty, non-gradual forms of transition, non-genetic factors of change. What can it explain then? So what I'm trying to focus.
That's everything. That's everything.
Exactly. That I'm trying to focus is the probabilistic nature, the assumptive nature of it. And my question to you is, there is a mechanism that has been ruling the academia for about 100 years, that is the natural selection. Is there, or are there any alternatives in the secular academia that do not agree with the novelty or the capacity of the natural selection that has been proposed?
So that's a very good question. And obviously, Gerd Müller, you quoted him there about his doubts about this. Now, before I get into the alternatives which are being proposed, what I'd like to highlight is that for 150 years, we have been brainwashed through documentaries, through popular books, through popular science speakers. Natural selection can do this. Natural selection can do that. Natural selection is this. Natural selection is capable of producing the most complex of biological systems. Yeah. Yet in 2016, after over 150 years, biologists are coming together and they're asking, can it solve this small biological problem? And some are like yes, some are like no.
No.
And can it solve the general problem of animal body plans? Some are yes, some are no. And I'm thinking, what the hell's been going on for the last 150 years? Yes. Have you guys been lying to us for the last 150 years? Or were you guys just in some sort of collective, amnesia? What's going on? Why weren't you telling us this information for 150 years? And this is what I find very, very strange. When it comes out, when there's a whistleblower, when someone comes out and says, this is the problem we've been facing for a long time, I think to myself, for the last couple of decades, everybody that was saying natural selection does this, natural selection does that, like Richard Dawkins, the blind watchmaker in the 80s, as if everything's perfectly fine. And then these guys come and say, actually, for a long time, we didn't know if Darwinism can solve the basics of adaptation, which is supposed to explain, yeah? So I just think to myself, how on earth is that possible? And it reminds me of Stephen Jay Gould, right? When he came up with the idea, he pushed it, yeah? So he was a paleontologist studying fossils. And he said, you know, the fact that there's no gradualism in the fossil record, this is a trade secret of paleontology. I thought, what the hell is he talking about? It's not supposed to have trade secrets. Paleontology is supposed to explain gradualism. It's supposed to show what Darwin believed was an assumption which cannot be taken away, which is gradualism. It's supposed to, okay, it's like this, yeah? Your job is to sell ice cream, yeah? And somebody says, at the annual ice cream convention after 20 years of successful ice cream business, right? Our trade secret is that we don't actually sell ice cream. What the hell were these paleontologists doing? Why was no one talking about this? Yeah. And when he came up with it, he got attacked. He got attacked, right? And then when he proposed the punctuated equilibrium, first the Darwinists, right? They were attacking him. Now the Darwinists are like, yeah, gradualism. Yeah, we've got punctuated equilibrium. So it's kind of like they got exposed. And after they got exposed, they basically were so shameless, they took the exposure and they just pretended it was part of Darwinism. Punctuated equilibrium is not part of Darwinism. Punctuated equilibrium is a stab in the heart of Darwinism.
Definitely. Even Darwin admitted himself in origin that if
said,
gradualism falls,
it will absolutely break down. Natural selection doesn't work through punctuations. It works through gradual, slow, steady. Yeah. Now, we have the sciences of hadith, right? We have isnad, we have chains of transmission. Yeah. Now, if you have a chain of transmission, you have this person said to this person, said to this person, said to this person. In the middle of the transmission, you have a frog. Yeah. That this frog spoke to this human being, and then just carry on. Hang on, there's a frog in there. Yeah. Your whole transmission, is gone. Yeah, we can't accept this mutton. We can't accept this this text. We can't do it. Yeah. Now, if you have evolution happening gradually, and then there's something of a punctuated equilibrium, you're going to think, no, that's not acceptable. That anomaly we need to explain. But they're so begheret, yeah, they're so shameless. All they have is punctuations. That's all they have.
Yes. Yes.
They don't have gradualism. They just have punctuation, and then there's no gradual thing going on, and then they just pretend like, oh yeah, it's fine. Yeah, we'll just re-synthesize it in Darwinism. Yeah.
Yes.
And you know, the sad thing is, those scientists who are pushing for alternative explanations, right? So they're saying maybe evolution by natural genetic engineering can explain this biological thing. Maybe horizontal gene transfer cannot be synthesized with Darwinism. Symbiogenesis, you know, maybe some sort of Lamarckian, neo-Lamarckian thing is going on. These people themselves are cornered, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Although they're saying that, look, natural selection can do stuff, but it can't do everything. So we have to have these alternatives. Those alternatives don't also work, which is why the Darwinists say to them, look, that doesn't work either.
Yes, yes.
And these guys say Darwinism doesn't work either. But there's a clear problem. And the clear problem is neither of them can accept intelligent design at all because of methodological naturalism. So even if, put it this way, we're a football team, they're a football team. Yeah? So you have the theist side and the atheist side. They're playing. Yeah. Now, amongst them, they have a disagreement. Yeah. They're disagreeing. You know, is it Darwinism? Does it work, or do we need a extended synthesis? Does it work? Or does it work? But they're still arguing amongst the same camp. When it comes to us, they're still all atheists, and they still will not accept anything naturalistic. And they still, this is very important, they still are so scared of giving creationists even a whiff of idea that there is a ikhtilaf, there is a disagreement amongst them, that even when they disagree with each other, they're very careful with the words they use because they don't want to be picked up. Yeah. Yes. They don't want people to know this thing going on. So then when in the large biological community, you can't control everybody. When one of them comes forward, like Jerry Fodor, right, a philosopher of science, when what's his name, Stephen Jay Gould or somebody else comes forward, right, and they basically do a bit of a discussion. Look, guys, things aren't really working out. There's a problem. Everybody attacks them. Everybody attacks them in their community. Why? Because you're basically putting your laundry out in public. Yeah, you're cleaning the laundry in public. It's very embarrassing. Now imagine if we actually had proper academic freedom of speech in evolutionary biology. Now someone may say, of course there's freedom of speech. Of course there's complete transparency. Oh yeah? Ask that to Masatashi Nai, Lynn Margulis, other people whose work they themselves said that they cannot challenge Darwin because Darwin's a god, who themselves published Lynn Margulis, she actually published, I believe, in 15 or 17 journals before her work was finally accepted. Yeah, okay. Because her ideas were not fitting within Darwin. Yeah? Even she, who is a very prestigious scientist, yeah.
If I'm not wrong, was she the wife of Sagan?
Carl Sagan, yes. Carl Sagan, yes. They divorced. So these people who are very prestigious, like Masatashi Nai is very prestigious, Lynn Margulis very prestigious, James Shapiro very prestigious, Dennis Noble very prestigious.
Yeah.
Why are there so few of them? Because it's a very difficult thing to stand up against society, to stand up against a prevailing idea. Because what happens when you come up? You get censored, you get labeled. You know, Jerry Fodor, he got called a secular creationist. Even though he got called a secular. Thomas Nagel, when he did Mind and Cosmos, and he said the thing which everybody knows. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows this. But
he's also an atheist.
He's also an atheist. He said that the idea that evolution through natural processes led to the life that we have today, he said this is not it's not a scientific theory which is backed up by masses of evidence. He said this is basically an a priori assertion, an assumption governing the biological sciences, not a proven, well, not proven, but not a theory which is backed up with masses of evidence. He got massively attacked. You know, Jerry Coyne on his blog, not blog, but his website, Why Evolution is True, which is, if you like, you know, like their little way of saying who's on the manhaj, who's not on the manhaj. Who's on our manhaj, who's not. He actually puts people, when they challenge Darwinism, he actually just takes them out. He's like, right, they're no longer going to be on this site. Recently, what's the name of that guy? The mathematician David Gerlenter, right?
He's from Yale, computer scientist.
Now, this guy, atheist, had no problem. Secular Jew, right?
Yeah.
No interest in getting into these sort of discussions, right? He basically said, look, it's a beautiful theory, but, you know, it's not working. It's not working, right? Now, Jerry Coyne, when he was writing about him, he basically wrote something very crude. He said, you know, because this guy is very famous, and in fact, one of the there's an American homegrown terrorist who was sending these packages to people's houses, and people were getting injured, right? He had some sort of he just wanted to kill people. He actually targeted him in the 90s, and this guy lost, got his hand damaged, and his head injured as well. And Jerry Coyne said, look, I know the guy had an injury, but that's no excuse for what he said. And I thought, what a horrible thing to say. What a horrible thing to say. Huh? If you don't disagree with him, challenge him. Challenge the other side.
Is that even an argument?
That's not
even an argument?
Yeah, and you know, the funny thing is...
Straw man.
The funny thing is, mathematically, atheists, you know, these online atheists are so dumb. They're so dumb, So they don't understand how things are linked. Yeah?
Yeah.
So for example, if you speak about mathematics and it's linked to Darwinism, for these average atheists, they can be thinking, what's the link between mathematics and Darwinism anyway? The problem is these people are so thick, they don't understand. Yeah. So biology breaks down to physics. Physics breaks down to chemistry. Biology breaks down to chemistry. Chemistry breaks down to physics. Physics breaks down to maths. Maths, if you like, is the pure science. Evolution, for it to work, for Darwinian evolution to work, for the tree of life hypothesis to take off, you have to base things on mathematical modeling. You have to. It's not just hocus pocus ideas or abstract thinking. You have to base things on on mutations, random mutations, and how this led to that, and how one mutation can be prevalent in a population and whatnot, right? It's all mathematics, population genetics, all mathematics, that's the core. Yet, they don't understand. So when you have a professor at Yale who comes out and he says, look guys, the maths is not working, yeah? Even if you don't agree with him, have some decency and respect science. They say we don't respect science because we don't accept conclusions which science never says are conclusions. Yeah? They don't respect science because when a mathematician comes forward and says, look guys, I'm having doubts about this, they attack that person personally. Yeah? When do Muslims do that? Which Muslim goes around attacking a scientist in terms of their personality rather than challenging their science, right? So everything that they say is wrong with us when it comes to science, it's the same with them. And one of the analogies I like to give about methodological naturalism, I think is very important to understand, right? I like to steal the example from Abdurrahim Green, right? But I've sort of modified it. So the example is this. Say if we go back 1,000 years, not 1,000 years, go back 2,000 years. We go back to the time of Isa alayhi salam, Jesus. And a whole bunch of scientists go from today, the best scientists, a group of them, they go into a time machine and they go back to Nazareth 2,000 years ago where Jesus was, right? Now, imagine they go to the village where Jesus is from, and Jesus is a grown man at the time, right? And what they do is that the whole village has been frozen. Everybody has been frozen. No one can talk, no one can speak, everyone's been frozen. And they go to the village and they go and they extract DNA from each of the people in the village. Now, when they extract the DNA of Isa alayhi salam, now when they are extracting the DNA of people, they say, okay, this person, his DNA matches this person, so he must be his father, this must be the sister-in-law. They work out an entire family tree of the entire village. Yeah? Because remember, villages in the past, everyone was related to each other. Yeah? Now, when it comes to Isa alayhi salam, using his genetics and the genetics of Maryam alayhi salam, who are they going to say is the mother of Jesus? And by the way, they don't know this is Jesus. They don't know this is Maryam alayhi salam. They just think these are a bunch of villages. Who are they going to think is the mother of Jesus based upon his genetics? They are methodological naturalists, so they cannot assume a miracle took place, that there was a virgin.
Yeah. Yes.
So they're going to firstly assume there is a father. They have to, by the lens of methodological naturalism. They have to.
Yes.
Okay. Now, who is the father? When they use genetics, they're going to find the closest male relative of Maryam alayhi salam is going to have DNA closest to Jesus because of that. It may be an uncle or whatever. Yeah? So, they're going to say this person is the father, using methodological naturalism. So they've done two things. They cannot accept a miracle took place, so they're assuming he has a father. And then using genetics, they say this must be the father.
Okay.
It may be an uncle of Isa alayhi salam. It may be a brother of Maryam alayhi salam. Okay? This is the same thing which is happening in evolutionary biology. They cannot accept the human being has a miraculous origin. So what they do is they take out the DNA of the human being, and then they look at any DNA which is the closest, and then they say, that's the common ancestor. And when it comes to the origin of life, they cannot, in the same way, they cannot accept a virgin birth. Allah said, kun fayakun, and there was a inception. They cannot accept a divine intervention, a divine genesis in the beginning. They have to accept, by methodological naturalism, there was a naturalistic origin, right? That's why when it comes to abiogenesis, no matter how irrational it seems that you can get DNA from all these hocus pocus ideas that they put forward, right? Which even according to them are super speculative. They still have to assume it's naturalistic because of the assumption of methodological naturalism.
Okay, now we have been discussing for a while. Now, keeping all these things in mind, the philosophy of science, the fact that it is actually revisible, it is speculative, and it has its own world of assumptions, and what it does is actually feed the external data inside the bucket of its assumptions. And with that understanding, we actually looked at the prevailing evolutionary theory, that is the modern synthesis, which has a history of life, there is a tree of life, and a mechanism which is natural selection. And we have discussed that natural selection is not holding up, and mainstream secular academics are actually putting forward different alternatives, and each of them is also limited, but they're actually arguing these things. And also there is a history, the history of life, which is a tree of life, which also had been abandoned in the academia nearboutly, and they're proposing that the tree of life is actually a more complex thing, some of calling it hedge or bush, whatever it is. So what you're seeing here is the idea that push forward that the evolutionary paradigm is something which is true. Why you'll be dumb to reject this theory. But when we go to the academia, we're finding that the people who themselves propose the theory, they are not certain about his fundamental issues. So there is a huge gap between.
Yeah, these people are fringe. We need to admit that as well.
Yeah, yes, but just because they're fringe, it doesn't mean that they'll not be a prevailing authority in one time, because Darwin was a kind of a fringe at his time. Every scientific revolution which starts with a fringe group of people, and then it becomes a kind of an authority. Now, what I want to ask you, what I've been asked, I think frequently, is that then Islam and evolution, is it a conflict or consonance? How we reconcile these two things with understanding of Islam and understanding of the science?
So look, I'm going to say two things about this. So firstly, Islam and Darwinism, I'm going to put it as rather than evolution, because the way I defined evolution, there's no issue. Yeah, biological change over time. Humans,
yes, it's obvious.
We can even have vestigial things left over if we adapted in a certain way 50,000 years ago or whatever. Okay? So evolution is not an issue.
Yes.
So when it comes to Darwinism, we need to keep some things in mind, right?
Okay.
The first is that when it comes to the Quran and the origin of man, how did man come around? Was human being, was the creation of man an instant creation? Was it a gradualistic creation? I'm not saying evolutionary, I'm saying gradualistic. How did it happen? What time did it happen? Where were the human beings? Where did they spread to? What happened, right? Well, we need to, and obviously, of course, that Denisovans, Neanderthals, Homo erectus, where do we blur the line? Were the latter Homo erectus species, were they human? Like, what I mean by human is Bani Adam. But these ancient things, what were they? We obviously, we know some basic things, that they were all the creation of Allah. Allah created the Denisovans, whatever it is, Allah created that. However, the relationships, what is a human? When do we start defining what a human is? What is extremely important to take away is this. Allah warns us in the Quran. Allah makes a warning in the Quran. And the sad thing is the warnings in the Quran are not heeded. Yeah, even by people who have a lot of knowledge of the Quran and the knowledge of Islam. Allah says, do not speak about that which you do not know. Allah also says, I did not make you witnesses to your creation or to the creation of the heavens and the earth. Yeah. So in terms of what is the Islamic story of creation, how did things happen? What exactly happened? There is silence. There is immense silence, right, from the Islamic perspective. We have in our tafsir books, Israeliyat, we have things that the Bani Israel and the Christians that they have, and we can't really accept them. Yeah, we don't know, and I'm not even talking about the Bible. I'm talking about stories that were passed on as well. Speaking about both things, so we can't say right. Our view is the same as the Christian view, because even the Christian view, to be honest, yeah, they're in complete disagreement about what classifies as how did things happen, can they accept this, can they accept that. What we as Muslims should do is this. We should just make it very clear. We're not here to give you a detailed account of what happened, because we don't know. That's very clear. 2, we're not here to have a discussion in which we're going to bring an alternative and we want you to test it scientifically, because we don't have something that we can actually say, right, this is exactly what happened. What we can do is this. We can say God is the creator of absolutely everything, and this idea that natural selection, evolution, Darwinism challenges God, we just take that on head on. We just take it on head on. We basically say, firstly, the science as you're projecting it is wrong. 2, you cannot use it as an argument against God. You cannot use it as an argument against the design of the universe, the design of human beings. You cannot use it to undermine the Islamic purpose of worshipping God. So we just, look, all we need to do as Muslims is we need to understand. People put forward arguments that Islam is not in sync with human rights. What they mean by human rights is a liberal conception of human rights, but they don't make the distinction between liberal conception and other conceptions, because for them, that's the only thing. Human rights is liberal, right? They say Islam is in conflict with science as well, right? So there's things in Islam which scientifically, virgin birth, whatever, evolution doesn't make sense. They also say Islam is not in sync with our intellectual understandings. It asks us to suspend intellectual understanding. So, for example, in the Quran, Allah says there is a tree. Allah mentions a tree in Jahannam which grows, right? Not grows, but there's a tree in Jahannam. So the Quraysh, they laughed at this. They laughed at this. They said, if Jahannam is so hot, how can a tree grow in Jahannam? How can there be a tree in Jahannam? So they laughed, because obviously you put wood in lava, it burns. You put wood in fire, it burns. So they couldn't understand how the Prophet ﷺ is speaking about a tree in Jahannam. And Allah says in the Quran, this is a test for them. This is a test for them. The fact is this, all we need to do is we need to give people good reasons why the belief in Allah makes complete sense, is in line with our fitrah, and is completely natural. We need to give people good reasons why the Quran is divine and the Prophet ﷺ is his messenger, rational reasons. Then if anything supposedly conflicts with Islam, someone's idea of morality, someone's idea of what science should be, someone's idea of their limited intellectual faculties can't understand wood burning in fire, that doesn't matter to them. That doesn't matter to us. We've shown Islam is true. And if Islam is true, everything else that you've come up with your philosophies, your ideas, your science, your conception of science, doesn't matter if it conflicts with Islam. Doesn't matter, because that's your conception of what reality is. The reality that we know to be true is that Allah and His Messenger spoke the truth, right? So we need to connect Muslims and then connect non-Muslims to why Islam is true, right? I didn't go into the field of studying natural selection and understanding that natural selection doesn't undermine God. And I didn't go into this field like an agnostic, yeah? I didn't go into this field and say, right, I'm going to go in the field and not hold my own view, or I'm going to put my view to the side and look at the evidence objectively. I am going to look at the evidence objectively, but I'm not going to put my belief in Allah or up in the agnostic section, yeah? Because I know it to be true, because I know the intellectual foundations of Islam are true. So it doesn't matter if somebody's saying it's not true or natural selection undermines God or whatever. Now, alhamdulillah, when I went in there, I found information that I used against them, which they cannot reject. Yeah. However, I find today we have made the intellect into a taghut, into a lat, into a uzza. Yeah. We instead, you know, the Quraysh used to worship the idol of Uzza, and the idol of Uzza was a physical idol. Now, when atheists and Muslims look at that idol, they think, how stupid is that? How can someone worship that idol? However, if you look at the atheists, the universe is an idol. What created us? Natural selection, Mother Nature, natural processes. Same thing. The universe is one giant Lat, one giant Uzza. That's what it is. Yeah? And science is supposed to be a tariqah, a way to get closer to Allah. That's when the Muslims first came up with the original scientific method. It was a way of getting closer to Allah. Instead of getting closer to Allah, they've started worshipping the science and worshipping the universe. Now, what we Muslims need to do is that we need to understand it is our duty, and this is a good point to end upon. It is our duty, as Allah says in the Quran, هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على دين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. Sheikh Ahmad Deedat said, you need to take this verse of the Quran, that it is He who sent His messenger with guidance and religion of truth so that it may prevail over all religion. He said, take this verse and stick it in your head as ammunition. This verse, we as Muslims need to keep at the forefront of our mind. Yeah? Islam is the religion of fitrah. It's the religion of fitrah. It's the religion which cannot be erased. You can attack it physically, politically, economically, intellectually, in every way you can. You can spread rumors about it. You can do exposés. You can do documentaries. You can try and sow these agents in the Muslim world to put confusion and civil strife. You can do what you want. You could try, but Allah tells you, and Allah tells the kuffar, they will spend and they will keep spending, and then they will regret the spending, and then they will be overcome. Allah gives you 3 stages. He said first they're going to go and they're going to spend their wealth to take on Allah and His Messenger, to take on Islam. Then they're going to regret spending that money, and then they're going to be overwhelmed. Then they're going to lose. Yeah. So what we need to do is we need to understand the promise of Allah is true. Muslims, I find them to be very pessimistic. They say, how can we take on these atheists? How can we take on these Darwinists? Say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, and stand up. Stand up for Islam. You're going to see Allah's going to help you. Yeah, Allah's going to help you. Wallahi, I'm telling you the truth, yeah. There are times where I haven't prepared an argument in my head, and it just comes in my head when I'm speaking to an atheist. I'm telling you the truth. Why? Not because I'm super intelligent. I'm just the same as everyone else. It's because I have a belief in Allah and His Messenger. And I'm not saying I'm pious. All I'm saying is that I believe in Allah and His Messenger and His promise. And when you stand up for Islam and be sincere and stand up for Islam, right? May Allah give us ikhlas. Allah will help you. Allah makes a promise in the Quran. We will guide to our ways those who strive in our path. Yeah, Allah says in the Quran, oh, you believe, respond to the call of Allah and His Messenger, to that which gives you life. And I'm telling you, Dr. Rafan, I'm sure you've experienced this in your life, yeah? When you went out there to call people to Allah, Allah helps you out of nowhere, right? Allah puts arguments in your head. Allah puts ideas in your mind that you never thought about. Allah makes you meet people. Allah makes you see quotes and see information which you didn't even think existed. Yeah? And that is barakah. That is Allah guiding us. And what we need to do is we need to have the passion that Sheikh Ahmad Deedat has for Islam. Yeah, we need to understand that we need to stand up for Islam, and we need to understand that we need to leave the world by the time we pass away, that the kuffar cannot challenge Islam intellectually. All they're left to do is ridicule. At the moment, they have an intellectual criticism. We need to make sure that by the time we die, all that they have left is just calling us names. And alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, I believe that's already happening. If you look at Muhammad Hijab, Hashim, Mansoor, these great speakers from Speaker's Corner, Hamza Sotsis, Adnan Rashid, if you look on their YouTube and you look on their Facebook and you look at their comments, people run out of ideas of challenging them, so they just start swearing at them. They just start mocking them. And I get happy when I see that, because I'm like, these guys, they're effective. You can't refute them, so you have to just mock them. And that's what we need to understand, that Islam is superior intellectually, and it will dominate the world intellectually. And all that we need to do is stand up for the sake of Allah, and Allah will make everything else happen.
Alhamdulillah, that was a very, very beneficial reminder for us. Now, one last question, we're at the very end, is do you have any plan to publish any book on the topic of evolution, science, etc.?
Okay, so the failed hypothesis book, long overdue. So let me just explain a little bit about this book.
Yes, please.
When I first started, obviously this is a joint effort between myself, Hamza, and Imran Singh. I don't know about those brothers, probably the same with them. But when I started writing, and at the same time as writing, I was learning, I was reading, and obviously I was doing my studies as well. My paradigm kept shifting, right? So I thought, okay, let me explain these problems with Darwinism. And then I would discover something new, and I think, actually, these problems, they're not even that big compared to how big this problem is. And then when I started to understand, and my thinking evolved as I was writing the book. So in the beginning, it was just a critique of Darwinism using science and the philosophy of biology. As I started writing and researching and going further and further, I started to realize, hang on a second, I'm not dealing with the main issue. The main issue is not even the science. The main issue is the ideology, the naturalism. That's the main issue. And when I started dealing with that, then obviously you're dealing with a different kettle of fish. You're dealing with a different field entirely. Then when I started researching into that and how you can basically dismantle that, then it just opened up a whole bunch of doors, and it kept growing and growing and growing. So Hamza got kind of like fed up. He's like, come on, Subboor, man, we need to finish this book. Like, we've been telling people so long. I did say to Hamza, look, yeah, if we put out the book before, it wouldn't have been as good as it's going to be now, inshallah, right? So the plan is early 2020 to publish the book. Hamza's keen, just get it out there. And the problem I have, and the problem he has, is that you just keep growing it. It just keeps growing. I mean, it was growing. Initially, the book was going to be maybe the size of the Eternal Challenge. And now it's just growing and growing and growing. It's probably going to be the size closer to the Divine Reality. Yeah, it's just becoming into a monster. But we need to stop at a point. And so we've decided, right, we need to just finish it now. So the plan is end of 2019, get the draft ready, proofread, and inshallah early 2020 publish it. Of course, with your du'as and the support of all the people. But I'd like to apologize massively, because a lot of people have been waiting, but it's just, even the atheist, I read a comment by Inspector Monkfish, whatever his name is, Mufti Monkfish, he calls himself. And he's like, you put out another stupid video after another stupid video. When's your stupid book going to be out? So even he's asking. I found that really funny. There's a lot of discussion. Yeah, you misquoted this person, you did this, you did that, you're a liar, you're a charlatan. The book will put it to rest. Like, if you have a book in front of you, the references are there. If you want to say, I'm quote mining, perfect, alhamdulillah. If you want to show I'm quote mining, I can correct myself. You can go and find that quote, because all the references are going to be there, and then you can put the quote in context, and then you can explain how I'm misrepresenting this particular thing. Whatever contention these atheists have, the book is your your chance to basically set the record straight, because it's all going to be printed. It's all going to be there for you to actually check the references, check the argumentation, and check whether we are actually deluded and we're deluding others, or whether it's the case the atheists are actually deluded.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Subboor. That was a long-awaited talk. Inshallah, if Allah gives us chance, we'll try to talk again about different topics, inshallah. And so, viewers, that was Brother Subboor Ahmad from IRA, and I am Dr. Rafan Ahmed. I'm actually concluding our today's podcast, and inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our deed. And if you have any suggestions or queries, you can put them in the comment section. And Brother Subboor Ahmed, Assalamu alaikum. May Allah keep you well.
And may Allah put barakah in your work in Bangladesh. I'd actually like to visit Bangladesh one day. Yeah, I really, like one of my the first Dawah organization I worked with.
Yes.
The head of the organization, he was from Bangladesh. And, I remember just spending time with him, and also the food Bengalis eat is my food. It's spicy. And, I'm a big fan of fish. So spicy food, fish, and also that, Bengali people are very, I would say, people don't know the intellectual history of Bangladesh, right? So people don't understand the intellectual capital which exists. Now, if we get a movement going in Bangladesh of Muslim intellectuals who are going out there, who are explaining Islam, subhanAllah, Allah's given, that part of the world a massive intellectual capital which they need to use for Islam. One of my friends, he's actually he's from Bangladesh, and he's a head teacher of a school in London. And he was telling me that even when Bangladeshis were Hindu, their actual God was like a god of, I think, business or something, right? And that's why even then they were very people who, we would call them jalak, like intelligent, like forward-thinking, progressive, and this type of thing. Sadly, some of them have put that capital for spreading secularism, right? But what we need to do is that we need to use that capital to intellectually explain Islam.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Subboor Ahmed. Now we are concluding our today's session. We're talking with Brother Subboor Ahmed, and I'm Dr. Rafan Ahmed from Window of Thoughts. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.